How many of you are reading the novel Beloved or have read it for class? The word beloved or beloved is the word, the adjective that I've heard used to describe today's chapel speaker so many times in the last couple of weeks. We're the beneficiaries of an unretiring retirement. After having worked for 39 years in public education, serving 30 years as the chair of the math department at the Lenape Regional High School, Lenape Valley Regional High School, Mr. Naysmith decided to have an unretiring retirement and come and teach here, and we are all that much fortunate for it. That's the word I've heard to describe him, beloved as a teacher, as a person here. And I'm having that opportunity in my first year here to get to know Mr. Naysmith. And I wanted to share something like me. Mr. Naysmith is a practicing Christian. Not everybody here is. And we learn from our different faith traditions. Just this week, I've been learning from one of my Hindu students. Over the weekend, I learned from some of my Jewish colleagues about important holidays in the Jewish tradition. The scripture that you're going to hear today is a Christian scripture that has applicability to all of us. And so I hope that you will welcome Mr. Naysmith, as I do, very excitedly. Welcome him, Blair, as he offers a chapel message for us.
Thank you. I want to start by telling you a little something about my family. I have a wonderful wife. She's affectionately known as Mama Nay. I just want you all to see her. We have 3 kids. Well, they're not kids anymore. Heidi, our oldest, lives in Charlotte, North Carolina. She has 5 children. Russell, our second, lives just outside of Stroudsburg. He has 2. Carolyn, our youngest, is the sous chef in the Blair kitchen here. In 2009, January of 2009, I was in a house tutoring. That's not unusual. I do 2 things. I teach and I tutor. No, 3 things. I also watch Yankee games. But in January of 2009, I was tutoring in a house, and I always have my phone next to me on the table, and my phone starts buzzing. And I look at it, it's my daughter Heidi, along with 5 kids. She gets on the phone and she says, "Dad," and I can hear her voice trembling. "You need to pray." I says, "Why?" She says, "I'm in the back of an ambulance taking Emily to Charlotte Medical Center." Emily was 14 years old. She was a gymnast. She had reached level 10. The next higher level is called elite. That's where the Olympians are taken from. That particular night, she was in her gym practicing, doing some routines, and she was running towards the balance beam. And as she got closer to it, she tripped. And she fell. And she fell into one of the legs of the balance beam. And that would normally not be a big deal. There's a knob on that leg that you can use to adjust the height of it. And there's a foam cushion that goes around that. Someone had forgotten to put that foam cushion on the leg. Emily crashes into it. crumples, lays on the floor. Heidi, her mom, runs down. An ambulance is called. She's taken 21 days in Charlotte Medical Center, 17 days in the ICU. Several operations culminating in the loss of a kidney. So she's going through life with one kidney. The reason I tell you that is because that was a very, very difficult time in the life of our family. Mom and I spent 3 weeks down in the hospital by her side, constantly praying that things would work out well, numerous blood transfusions. And one of the things that got me through that, in fact, got our whole family through that, is I spend a little time every morning. When you see me at Blair in the morning, I have already read something from the Bible. And there was a passage that I had read just prior to that, actually, that provided me with incredible comfort, and I'd like that put up on the screen at this point. Okay. And we know that all that happens to us is working together for our good, as we fit into the plan God has for us. And I held on to that, and I repeated it to myself over and over again. As I fit into the plan that God has for me, all things are going to work together for good. 8 years later, she's a vibrant human being working in Washington, D.C., loving life, but only has one kidney. And the reason I've projected this up here, and I want you to know that I'm a little more than math. And here's what I mean by that. That part of the Bible was originally written in the Greek language. Those two words, working together, that is translated from a Greek word that, and I'm sure I'm going to get this wrong, but synergeo. So if I was reading this in Greek and I come to that, I would say, is synergeo for our good? The word synergeo has been translated into English as synergism. All things are synergistically working together. What does that mean? Synergism is that concept, that property that says the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. So here's a math word problem. I have 3 yellow marbles in my left hand. Not really. I have 2 blue marbles in my right hand. How many marbles do I have altogether? And if you don't say 5, then we have a remedial class. See, most of our life is spent in the whole is equal to the sum of the parts, but synergism is the property that says the whole can be greater than the sum of the parts. Such as, I take a whole bunch of wire strands that could each hold a certain weight. And I twist them together, and I twist them together, and I make a steel cable, a steel rope. And I'm able to use that steel rope on a tow truck to tow a car, in a winch to pull things closer to me, and the ultimate, on the George Washington Bridge. That's just a bunch of steel cables holding up a bridge. Each one of those cables can't do it by itself, and the sum of all those cables, if they were all individually strung, could not hold that thing up. But twisted together, synergism happens. And together, it's able to lift up far more than all of the sums of all of the weights. You know what else synergism explains? We're getting close to that time of the year when you're going to see flocks of geese flying overhead. And probably a few are going to land and do what we don't want them to do. But when you see them flying overhead, they are generally flying in a V formation. That's not just random. It's something similar to bicycle racers who race so close to each other you can't believe that they don't crash, and they're doing what's called drafting. And they ride that way for a certain length of time, and then the lead rider goes in the back, and they alternate. And you know why they do that? So that each one of them can ride further than he would be able to if he was all by himself. So those geese that are flying in that V formation are able to fly 70% further as a flock than each one of them could by itself. That's synergy. Before I came to Blair, I worked for 30 summers at a boys' camp in the Adirondack Mountains. Much of that time, I was the chef in the kitchen. We made everything from scratch because we were part of what then was called, I don't think it still exists, the school food lunch program, where schools and nonprofit organizations could basically get government food. But I'll tell you, it was good quality stuff. We got flour. We got blocks of cheese. And as a result, we had to use this stuff, and so we made all of our stuff from scratch. You could not go into our pantry and see a box that ended with the word mix. We didn't have it. We made it. And one of the things that we made that was an absolute favorite was a chocolate cake recipe. And what I'm going to do today, in the time that I have left, is show you how we made that cake. And I'm afraid I'm going to mess myself up, and I have one class left to teach. And as I'm doing this, the recipe is going to go up on the screen, just in case any of you want to jot it down. Maybe. But I warn you, the quantities in the recipe, remember, I used this at a camp. So we fed a lot of people. It was a boys' camp. So we fed a lot of hungry boys. So there's some big quantities. So I start off, and I have a big mixing bowl. And in that mixing bowl, I put some brown sugar. So we'll put a little brown sugar in this glass, just so you can see it. And as I hold this up, I'm sure there are some here today who would say, would you pass that to me so that I can have a spoon? But I'm going to tell you, unless you have a really, really, really sweet tooth, you're probably not going to want to eat brown sugar raw. So that goes first in the mixing bowl. Next, we take real cocoa. You know, I don't mean the kind you get in an envelope that says Swiss Miss on it. I mean the real stuff, 100% cacao. And I'm sure I messed that up, but that's immaterial compared to what's going in this glass. See? That's the real stuff. Now, I'm sure that there's not, I'd probably be hard pressed to find somebody out there who would say, I'll eat that as is. And that's a tough swallow. And then we come along and we have to put some butter in this. And you can see from the recipe how much butter is going in. I'm just going to put a token amount. All right, I'm coming back with my spoon because I wonder if there's anyone out there who would really, really, honestly be happy with a spoonful of butter. I mean, that's a tough swallow. Now, I know there are some people who, for a joke, would take one of these and eat it. But I hope, well, I read about some triathletes who do this kind of stuff, but I'd say most of us are not going to be happy putting this to our lips and so those 4 items go in our mixing bowl, and we turn that mixer on, and we just beat the daylights out. It gets smooth, it gets all mixed up, it gets creamy. While that's happening, we are putting some flour in a mixing bowl. And so I repeat my question. Anyone willing to take a spoonful of just pure, I mean, it's gold medal. Can't go wrong. I don't think we have any takers on that. And we don't sweeten the pot at all, because the next thing we put in there is some good old-fashioned baking soda. The kind that your mother used to give you when you had a sore throat. She said, gargle. Or the alternative to toothpaste when you run out. Baking soda. Again, not something you're going to jump into and say, oh, I want it. We sift that together. We leave it in a bowl. Then we finally get to something that most of us would be happy drinking. So as you look at all these items so far, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, maybe 2 that are things we would enjoy. And we are quickly going to ruin the milk. Because this cake doesn't have just milk. It has sour milk. You lost your chance to get a good glass of milk because it is now sour milk. Well, finally we get to something that is probably as safe as it gets. Good old-fashioned water. The only problem is we boil this. And it goes into the cake as 200 and whatever. I mean, it's not going to last at 212 very long, right? But it's going to be hot. So I think we've lost your opportunity to get some of that. And then we finally, to that hot water, we add some good old-fashioned vanilla extract. We put that in there. We mix it in with the boiling water. I feel like I'm on the chew a little bit here. And now we start alternately putting the liquid ingredients into the cream mixture, the dry ingredients into the cream mixture, until we finally have our cake batter. My granddaughter Emily very, very tough experience. It affected all of us. For months, we were living that nightmare. That nightmare. That nightmare. That nightmare. When you think of life, I don't want to be a pessimist, but I'm going to tell you, there's more bad than good. There's tests. There's rainy days when you got to walk from Annie to Bowl. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, you're going to have experiences, and you're going to say, that's my cocoa experience. That's my butter experience. But synergism, all things work together synergistically. If that's not synergism, I don't know what it is. Would you predict that put all these things in a pot, that would come out? I don't think so. And that's synergism. When the end result is unpredictable from looking at the elements that make it up. Synergism, all things work together for good, to them that fit into God's plan. Thank you for listening. Seniors first.